When we talk about chronic fatigue, bloating, persistent inflammation, and unexplained immune dysfunction, we must start with the gut. The gut lining is designed to be a tight, highly selective barrier, allowing in nutrients while keeping out toxins, microbes, and undigested food particles. But in today's world of processed foods, antibiotic overuse, stress, and environmental chemicals, that barrier becomes compromised. Tiny gaps form between the cells of the intestinal wall, a condition widely known as leaky gut. And once that barrier is breached, the immune system becomes relentlessly activated. What follows is a cascade of systemic inflammation, worsening digestive discomfort, hormonal imbalance, and for many people, an unrelenting sense of fatigue. Clinically, I see this pattern repeatedly. When the gut lining weakens, everything downstream begins to malfunction. The microbiome shifts in the wrong direction. Helpful bacteria decline while pathogenic species overgrow. The immune system becomes overwhelmed, constantly reacting to foreign material slipping into the bloodstream. This is why so many chronic conditions, from autoimmunity to metabolic disorders, can trace part of their origin back to a damaged gut wall. However, the solution is far simpler and far more powerful than most people realize. There is one food, a natural and biologically active nutrient source that directly nourishes the cells of the gut lining, helps seal the intestinal barrier, reduces inflammatory load, and feeds the beneficial microbial species we depend on for long-term health. This food provides the exact building blocks needed for repair, along with compounds shown to calm immune overactivation and support a more diverse, resilient microbiome. When used daily, it can help restore digestive integrity, reduce symptoms, and create the biochemical environment the body needs to heal itself from the inside out. Leaky gut is, at its core, a structural failure of the intestinal barrier. The gut lining is only one cell thick, yet it performs one of the most sophisticated filtering jobs in the body. These cells sit tightly together, held in place by protein structures called tight junctions. Think of tight junctions as the security gates of an airport. They decide what gets through and what must stay out. Under ideal conditions, they open and close with precision, allowing nutrients into the bloodstream while blocking harmful substances. But when these gates become damaged or stuck in an open position, the gut becomes permeable. This is what we call increased intestinal permeability, or leaky gut. When tight junctions loosen, large molecules that were never meant to cross into the bloodstream suddenly slip through. This includes bacterial fragments, toxins, food particles, and chemical residues. The immune system identifies these as foreign invaders and mounts an attack. It is not a single, sharp reaction, but an ongoing state of alarm. The immune system remains switched on, releasing inflammatory chemicals day after day. This chronic, low-grade inflammation spreads throughout the body, and because the bloodstream reaches every organ, the effects are widespread. Clinically, we see bloating and gas not simply as digestive issues, but as signs that the gut wall is irritated and struggling to regulate what passes through it. Brain fog appears because inflammatory molecules can cross into the brain and disrupt neurotransmitter signaling. Fatigue becomes constant because the immune system consumes enormous energy when it is chronically activated. Skin problems such as eczema, acne, or rashes often reflect inflammation leaking through the gut and expressing itself through the body's largest detoxification organ, the skin. Even immune dysfunction arises because the immune system becomes distracted and overworked, reacting to false alarms instead of responding appropriately to real threats. The microbiome also shifts dramatically when the gut becomes permeable. Beneficial bacteria thrive in a stable, well-sealed environment. When permeability increases, harmful species gain access to nutrients they should not have, and beneficial microbes lose ground. This imbalance further weakens the gut wall, creating a self-perpetuating cycle. Pathogenic bacteria produce toxins that irritate the lining, and undigested food particles feed the wrong microbial species, all worsening the inflammatory process. To understand why this is such a systemic problem, it helps to imagine the gut as the body's front line border. If that border develops holes, unwanted materials slip through, causing confusion and chaos within the body. Once inflammation takes hold, it affects hormones, metabolism, mood, and even sleep. This is why so many people find themselves struggling with weight, cravings, or difficulty maintaining energy. The body cannot regulate these systems when inflammation is constantly present. Repairing the gut lining is therefore not optional. It is foundational. Before we address weight loss, hormonal balance, thyroid function, chronic fatigue, or immune issues, the gut must be restored to its intact, selective, well-sealed state. When the gut barrier is strong, inflammation decreases, nutrient absorption improves, and the microbiome can begin rebuilding itself. The immune system finally receives relief from constant stimulation and can return to a balanced, efficient mode of operation. Many people attempt to fix symptoms on the surface, treating fatigue with stimulants, addressing mood with supplements, or trying to lose weight through restrictive diets. But unless the gut wall is repaired, these interventions only scratch the surface. The root problem remains unaddressed. A healthy gut barrier acts as the foundation upon which all other healing processes depend. Once it is restored, the body is far more capable of regulating itself, producing energy, supporting detoxification, and maintaining a stable immune response. When the gut lining becomes compromised, the microbiome, the community of trillions of microorganisms living in the intestine, loses the stability it depends on. Normally, the gut is a carefully balanced ecosystem. Beneficial bacteria flourish along the mucosal surface, feeding on dietary fibers and producing short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, acetate, and propionate. These compounds are not just fuel for colon cells. They regulate inflammation, strengthen the gut barrier, and communicate with the immune system to maintain tolerance rather than overreaction. When the intestinal lining is damaged and tight junctions loosen, this delicate balance is disrupted. Pathogenic species seize the opportunity to expand, outcompeting beneficial microbes for nutrients, and bacterial diversity drops, which undermines the resilience of the microbiome. A weakened gut wall also allows partially digested proteins, bacterial fragments, and endotoxins to cross into the bloodstream. The immune system responds by producing inflammatory cytokines and antibodies, creating a state of chronic low-grade inflammation. This inflammation does not remain confined to the gut. It spreads systemically, affecting the brain, liver, muscles, and skin, which is why fatigue, brain fog, and skin rashes are common signs of microbiome imbalance. In parallel, inflammation further damages the mucosal layer, reduces mucus production, and limits the growth of beneficial bacteria. This creates a vicious cycle. Leaky gut leads to dysbiosis, and dysbiosis worsens intestinal permeability. Loss of short-chain fatty acids is particularly important. Butyrate, for example, is the primary energy source for colonocytes, the cells lining the gut. Without it, the gut lining cannot regenerate effectively, leaving the barrier weak and more susceptible to further insults. Acetate and propionate support metabolic and immune functions, and their depletion affects systemic processes, including glucose metabolism and immune tolerance. Biochemically, this translates to cravings for sugar and processed foods, as the microbiome signals the host to provide the nutrients certain microbes require, reinforcing poor dietary patterns and feeding pathogenic species. Other typical signs of microbiome disruption include bloating, gas, and poor digestion. When beneficial bacteria are reduced, the breakdown of complex carbohydrates is incomplete, leading to fermentation by pathogenic bacteria that produce gas and discomfort. Immune reactivity increases because the immune system encounters microbial fragments it is not accustomed to tolerating, often resulting in allergies, food sensitivities, or autoimmune flare-ups. Fatigue emerges from the constant inflammatory signaling, which diverts energy from normal cellular processes, while neurotransmitter synthesis can be impaired, contributing to mood disturbances and brain fog. Ultimately, a damaged gut lining and a disrupted microbiome act together to reinforce each other. The structural weakness of the gut allows pathogens to flourish, while the loss of beneficial bacteria removes critical support for barrier repair and immune regulation. Addressing one without the other is rarely effective. True restoration requires both repairing the intestinal lining and rebalancing the microbial ecosystem. Biochemically, this means supplying the gut with the right substrates for bacterial growth, reducing inflammatory triggers, and allowing the barrier to reseal, which collectively interrupts the cycle of dysbiosis and systemic inflammation. The single most effective food for repairing a damaged gut lining and restoring microbial balance is bone broth. This may sound simple, but the components of bone broth are precisely what the gut requires to rebuild itself at the cellular level. Bone broth is rich in amino acids such as glycine, proline, and glutamine. Glutamine, in particular, serves as the primary fuel for enterocytes, the cells that form the intestinal lining. When glutamine availability is sufficient, enterocytes can proliferate and repair the gaps in the tight junctions, reducing intestinal permeability. Glycine and proline contribute to collagen synthesis, reinforcing the structural integrity of the gut wall and mucosal layers, which are essential for maintaining a selective barrier that prevents unwanted substances from entering the bloodstream. In addition to amino acids, bone broth contains gelatin, which is partially hydrolyzed collagen. Gelatin has the ability to form a protective coating on the gut lining, which soothes inflammation and promotes mucosal healing. This coating also enhances digestive enzyme activity, allowing for more efficient breakdown and absorption of nutrients. By improving enzyme function, the gut can better process proteins, fats, and carbohydrates, reducing the risk of undigested food particles, triggering immune reactions, or feeding pathogenic bacteria. Bone broth also contains naturally occurring minerals and trace elements such as calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, and potassium. These minerals support cellular function, maintain electrolyte balance, and provide cofactors necessary for enzymatic reactions involved in tissue repair and immune regulation. Certain polyphenolic compounds and glycosaminoglycans in the broth exhibit anti-inflammatory properties, reducing cytokine activation and systemic inflammation, which further protects the gut lining from ongoing immune-mediated damage. The impact of bone broth on the microbiome is profound. It provides substrates that beneficial bacteria can metabolize, supporting microbial diversity and promoting the growth of short-chain fatty acid-producing species. As butyrate, acetate, and propionate levels rise, the energy supply to colonocytes is restored, reinforcing the gut barrier from the inside out. The combination of amino acids, collagen, minerals, and anti-inflammatory compounds creates an environment in which the mucosal layer can thicken, tight junctions can seal, and the microbiome can re-establish equilibrium. When consumed regularly, bone broth is not merely food. It is a biologically active agent that repairs structural damage, supports microbial resilience, and enhances the body's innate capacity to regulate inflammation and optimize digestion. When the gut lining is damaged, the microbiome suffers because beneficial bacteria lose their preferred environment and substrates, while pathogenic species gain a foothold. The #1 gut healing food, bone broth, addresses this imbalance directly by providing nutrients that both nourish the gut lining and feed microbial communities. The amino acids, collagen, and glycosaminoglycans present in bone broth are metabolized not only by the body's cells, but also by certain commensal bacteria. These bacteria ferment the compounds to produce short-chain fatty acids such as butyrate, acetate, and propionate, which are critical for colonocyte energy, mucosal repair, and systemic anti-inflammatory signaling. By fueling this fermentation process, bone broth indirectly supports the proliferation of beneficial species such as Lactobacillus and Bifidobacterium, which prefer a nutrient-rich, well-maintained gut environment. Short-chain fatty acids also lower gut pH, creating an acidic environment that inhibits the growth of pathogenic bacteria like Clostridium difficile and certain Enterobacteriaceae. This shift in microbial ecology reduces competition for beneficial species, allowing microbial diversity to increase naturally. As the microbiome becomes more balanced, these microbes begin producing metabolites that communicate with the immune system, promoting tolerance rather than unnecessary activation. The mucosal immune system, which monitors bacterial populations, responds to these positive signals by producing protective immunoglobulins such as IgA. This enhances the gut's first line of defense while maintaining harmony between the microbiota and the host. Beyond microbial feeding, bone broth's components strengthen the mucosal barrier directly. Collagen and gelatin support the structural integrity of the epithelial layer, while glutamine fuels enterocytes to proliferate and seal gaps between cells. As the lining becomes more intact, the microbiome benefits further because pathogenic bacteria have less opportunity to invade or trigger inflammation. Reduced inflammatory signaling allows commensal bacteria to thrive, reinforcing a positive feedback loop where gut repair and microbial restoration progress together. Daily consumption of bone broth helps maintain this cycle by continuously supplying nutrients that serve dual purposes, repairing the gut lining and sustaining beneficial microbial populations. The result is improved fermentation, enhanced short-chain fatty acid production, lowered gut pH, and stronger mucosal immunity. Over time, the gut ecosystem becomes more resilient, capable of resisting pathogenic overgrowth, regulating inflammation, and supporting digestion, energy production, and systemic immune function. Bone broth essentially orchestrates a natural, biologically integrated repair of the microbiome, while simultaneously restoring the intestinal barrier that underpins overall health. For maximum gut healing benefits, bone broth should be incorporated into daily routines in a structured yet flexible way, allowing the gut to receive a steady supply of nutrients needed for repair. Ideally, start the day with a warm cup of bone broth before breakfast. Drinking it on an empty stomach allows the amino acids and collagen to be absorbed efficiently without competing with other foods, providing fuel directly to enterocytes, the gut lining cells, and helping to prime digestive enzyme activity for the day. A portion of 200 to 250 milliliters is sufficient to begin, and this can be gradually increased as tolerated. For those with sensitive digestion, smaller sips at first help the gut adjust without triggering discomfort or bloating. At midday, bone broth can be incorporated as part of a light meal or alongside vegetables rich in soluble fiber such as carrots, zucchini, or squash. This combination provides substrates for beneficial bacteria, supporting microbial diversity and short-chain fatty acid production. Including easily digestible proteins and minimal starches during this meal helps reduce the digestive load while still supplying essential amino acids. This is particularly useful for individuals with compromised digestive capacity, as it allows nutrients to be absorbed efficiently while limiting inflammation caused by incomplete digestion. A 250 milliliter serving added to a bowl of lightly cooked vegetables or blended into a soup is practical and well tolerated. In the evening, bone broth serves both a restorative and relaxing function. Consuming it before or alongside a light dinner ensures that repair processes continue overnight when the gut lining is most receptive to regeneration. Pairing bone broth with non-starchy vegetables and healthy fats such as olive oil or avocado supports the absorption of fat-soluble compounds and reduces postprandial inflammation. For those who experience reflux or delayed gastric emptying, sipping slowly after the main meal rather than before may improve comfort while maintaining nutrient delivery. Evening intake reinforces daily consistency, which is critical because gut lining repair is a gradual process that depends on repeated exposure to these building blocks. Consistency is the key principle. Daily intake, spread across morning, midday, and evening, maintains a continuous supply of glutamine, glycine, proline, and collagen to support tight junction repair, mucosal regeneration, and microbial feeding. For individuals with heightened sensitivities or digestive challenges, starting with smaller portions 2 or 3 times per day and gradually increasing as tolerance improves allows the gut to adapt without triggering symptoms. Variations can include straining the broth for clarity, lightly seasoning with anti-inflammatory herbs such as thyme or parsley, or blending with pureed vegetables to enhance nutrient density without increasing the digestive burden. By structuring meals in this way, timing consumption to enhance absorption, pairing with fiber and gentle proteins, and maintaining daily consistency, bone broth becomes a therapeutic food that actively promotes gut barrier repair, supports microbial diversity, and reduces systemic inflammation. Over weeks of regular use, these simple, natural steps accelerate healing, improve digestion, and create a foundation for broader health improvements, including better energy, mood, and immune resilience. Healing the gut requires more than adding supportive foods. It also requires actively avoiding substances and habits that compromise the intestinal lining and destabilize the microbiome. Processed sugars are particularly damaging because they feed pathogenic bacteria and yeast, leading to overgrowth and dysbiosis. Excess sugar intake also promotes glycation and oxidative stress, which directly injure enterocytes and impair tight junction integrity, keeping the gut wall permeable. Healthier alternatives include naturally low sugar fruits such as berries, or using minimal amounts of natural sweeteners like stevia or monk fruit when flavoring is needed. Alcohol is another major contributor to gut barrier disruption. It alters microbial balance, reduces mucus production, and generates reactive oxygen species that inflame the gut lining. Even moderate consumption can prevent full repair, so abstaining or limiting intake to occasional minimal exposure is critical. Seed oils, including corn, soybean, and sunflower oils, are high in omega-6 fatty acids that promote inflammatory pathways. Chronic intake shifts the body towards systemic inflammation, further compromising mucosal repair. Replacing these with anti-inflammatory fats such as olive oil, avocado oil, or coconut oil supports both cell membrane integrity and balanced inflammatory signaling. Ultra-processed foods are often stripped of fiber and rich in additives, emulsifiers, and preservatives that disrupt bacterial communities and degrade mucosal layers. Artificial additives can directly loosen tight junctions, increase intestinal permeability, and trigger immune activation. Choosing whole, minimally processed foods ensures the gut lining receives the nutrients it needs while providing substrates for beneficial bacteria. Antibiotics, while sometimes medically necessary, must be used judiciously because they indiscriminately destroy microbial populations, reducing diversity and allowing pathogenic species to dominate. After antibiotic use, replenishing the microbiome with nutrient-rich gut, healing foods, and minimizing additional triggers is essential for recovery. Overeating and large, heavy meals also stress digestive capacity, leaving undigested food to ferment and feed harmful bacteria. Smaller, frequent meals that are easy to digest reduce strain and support optimal absorption. Lifestyle factors are equally important. Poor sleep impairs immune regulation and increases cortisol, which weakens the gut barrier and alters microbial composition. Chronic stress produces similar effects through sustained sympathetic activation and inflammatory signaling, slowing healing and worsening permeability. Incorporating regular rest, stress reduction techniques such as meditation or gentle movement, and consistent sleep schedules protects the gut lining and allows repair processes to function effectively. Avoiding these dietary and lifestyle triggers creates the conditions necessary for the gut lining to seal, the microbiome to rebalance, and inflammation to resolve. Simple replacements, slow, sugar whole foods, anti-inflammatory fats, moderate portion sizes, and restorative sleep work synergistically with supportive foods like bone broth to accelerate gut repair. Consistently removing these barriers ensures that the body can focus on regeneration rather than continuously fighting new insults, laying the foundation for improved digestion, energy, immunity, and overall health.